A poor widow falls asleep on a cowboy's shoulder. What he did next changed her life forever. The train rattled across the dusty plains like a weary beast, hauling strangers chasing hopes they barely dared to say aloud. In the third car from the back, where the cracked leather seats smelled of sun and old sweat, a thin woman sat clutching a faded carpetbag to her chest. Her dress, once pale blue, had turned the color of river ice. Her hands trembled around the fraying strap of the bag, though she tried to hide it. Her name was Clara Wells, 29 years old, widow of a man who had worked himself into a grave. Poverty had been her shadow for years, but the last year had broken her more than all the others. The small house she and her late husband Henry had built together was gone, taken by the bank. The sewing jobs that had once fed her dried up. And when winter came early and hard, Clara found herself with nothing left but the clothes she wore and the last letter she had ever received. It was from an old friend of Henry's, a ranch owner, a man she had never met. "If you ever find yourself without a place, Clara, come to my ranch. Henry once saved my life. I will never forget that debt." The name at the bottom was Samuel Hart. The train was taking her to his town, Dusty Creek. She didn't know if he even remembered writing the letter. It was 7 years old. But hope was all she had left, and she clung to it the way a drowning soul clings to driftwood. Across from her sat a man in a dusty hat, boots caked with dried mud, and a shirt that had seen too many days of work. His jaw was rough with stubble, his shoulders broad, and his eyes a deep, quiet brown that held the steadiness of someone who had survived storms without flinching. He glanced at her from time to time, not in curiosity, but in concern. Clara kept her chin high, though fatigue weighed on her like stones tied to her eyelids. The train clattered on. Her body, hollow from hunger, swayed with each jolt. She hadn't slept properly in days. She hadn't eaten much either. And finally, when the train lurched sharply on a bend, she lost her battle against exhaustion. Her head slipped sideways and came to rest gently on the cowboy's shoulder. For a moment she didn't realize it. Her mind, drifting in a fog, knew only that she was leaning against something warm, steady, safe. The cowboy froze. Something sparked in his eyes, surprise, then worry. He looked down at her thin, tired face resting on his arm, her lashes trembling in sleep, her lips parted slightly as though she had fallen asleep mid-breath. He didn't move. He didn't wake her. Not even when the train jostled again and she nestled closer, her breath brushing lightly against his shirt. After a long moment, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small wool blanket, clean, patched carefully, clearly used often but tended to with pride. He draped it gently over her shoulders. She stirred but didn't wake. He didn't know her name, he didn't know her story. But he knew she was exhausted, and he knew what it was like to have no one notice. He sat there perfectly still for more than an hour. When the train finally screeched into Dusty Creek Station, Clara blinked awake in confusion. She jerked upright, mortified. "Oh goodness, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her cheeks flushing. "I didn't mean to." "It's all right," the cowboy said in a low, calm voice. "You were tired." His voice was warm but controlled, like a man who didn't say more than necessary. Clara swallowed. "Thank you for the blanket." He gave a small nod and tipped his hat. "Safe travels, ma'am." He grabbed his saddlebag and stepped off the train before she could say another word. She watched his tall figure disappear into the crowd and felt a strange tightness in her chest. Whoever he was, something about him made her feel steadier than she had in a long time. But she didn't know they'd be meeting again very, very soon. Dusty Creek was a small, harsh town, its buildings sun-bleached and its streets dry as bone. The wind carried sand that scraped across one's cheeks like tiny knives. Clara followed the directions from the letter, walking toward the edge of town where the houses faded into open land. But when she arrived at the address listed, her heart dropped like a stone. The house was abandoned, the windows boarded, the yard overgrown. Samuel Hart had left this place long ago. Clara stood there staring, her knees shaking. A man passing by with a wagon slowed when he saw her. "You looking for the Hart place?" he asked. "Yes," she said softly. "Well, Sam Hart died 2 years back. His ranch got sold off. His nephew runs it now." Clara's breath hitched. Hope fluttered weakly, then began to die. The man pointed west, Wild River Ranch. "'Bout an hour's walk," she thanked him, though her voice trembled. Then she turned and walked. Every step felt heavier than the last. What if Samuel's nephew had never heard of her? What if he refused her? Where would she go? She had no money, no home, nothing left to give. The sun was dipping low by the time she reached the ranch. It was the largest in the region. Fields of golden grass stretching to the horizon. A massive barn, horses running freely along the fences. And then she saw him, the cowboy from the train. He was standing at the corral, tightening a saddle strap. When he looked up and saw her, surprise flickered in his eyes, but not displeasure. "You," she breathed. "You found the ranch," he said simply. Her heart slowed. He wasn't just a cowboy. He was Samuel Hart's nephew. "You're Mr. Hart?" she whispered. He nodded. "Name's Elias Hart. Folks call me Eli." Clara felt dizzy. "I came here because your uncle once offered me a place if I ever needed it. I didn't know he had passed. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to impose. I can leave." "Did you eat today?" Eli interrupted. Clara blinked. Not really. Then you're not going anywhere." His tone was gentle but firm. He guided her toward the main house, where warm lamplight glowed through the kitchen windows. The interior was cozy but modest. Wooden floors, a big oak table, a hearth with crackling fire. He pulled out a chair for her. "Supper's simple tonight," he said, ladling stew into a bowl. "But it'll fill your stomach." Clara stared at the bowl, her eyes burning with tears she tried desperately to hide. "Thank you, truly." Eli sat across from her, watching quietly as she ate. She tried not to devour the food too quickly, but hunger overcame manners. When she finally looked up, embarrassed, he only shook his head. "You don't have to explain. Hard travels, I imagine." Only then did she tell him the truth about losing her home, her work drying up, the last of her savings spent on the train ticket. "I didn't know where else to go," she admitted, voice cracking faintly. Eli leaned back, studying her with thoughtful eyes. "My uncle didn't make promises lightly. If he said you had a place, then you have a place. But you don't even know me," she whispered. He held her gaze. "I know enough. I know you're honest. And I know you're tired. That's enough for now." And just like that, the crushing weight in her chest loosened. Clara spent the next weeks helping around the ranch, cooking meals, mending clothes, tending the garden, feeding chickens. She worked hard, and Eli noticed. He rarely said much, but his silence was never cold. He carried heavy loads she struggled with, repaired a broken chair so she'd have somewhere comfortable to sit while sewing, and always made sure she had enough to eat. But the truth was, something deeper was happening. Every time Clara heard his boots on the porch, her heart lifted. Every time Eli saw her laugh softly at the antics of the ranch dogs, his gaze softened in a way he tried to hide. Still, neither dared speak of it. One evening, after a long day of work, Clara sat on the porch step, gazing at the sunset bleeding shades of gold and rose across the sky. Her hands were tired, her dress dusty, but she felt peaceful, something she hadn't felt in years. Eli came out and sat beside her. "You're fitting in well," he said, his voice low. "I'm grateful to have a place at all," she replied softly. "You've been very kind, Eli." He hesitated. "Kindness doesn't have to mean something." "But it does," Clara whispered, turning to him. "You offered me shelter when I had nothing. You gave me food, work, dignity. That means everything." He looked away, jaw tightening. "Most folks don't know what it feels like to have nobody. Do you?" she asked gently. Eli didn't answer for a long time. My parents died when I was 16. Uncle Sam took me in. This ranch saved me, so I return the favor when I can." Clara's heart tightened. She placed a hand over his. He didn't pull away. The wind brushed softly across the porch, carrying the scent of sage and warm earth. The sky darkened, and in that quiet moment, Eli finally spoke the truth he had been swallowing for weeks. "That day on the train," he murmured, "when you fell asleep on my shoulder, I didn't want you to wake up." Clara let out a soft, shaky breath. "I was so embarrassed when I realized," she admitted. "I didn't mean to." "I know," he said, "but you trusted me without knowing it. Something about that stuck with me." Their eyes met, and Clara realized she had been waiting to hear those words since the moment she stepped onto the ranch. But before she could answer, a shout came from inside. "Eli, the horses! Something spooked them." Eli jolted upright. "Stay here." But Clara didn't stay. She ran after him into the dark, where 2 horses had broken the fence and were frantic, kicking and struggling. Eli rushed forward to grab the reins of the first horse, but the second bucked wildly, breaking loose. It charged straight toward Clara. "Clara!" Eli yelled. She froze. The world narrowed. Then suddenly, Eli was there, arms sweeping around her, pulling her hard against his chest as the horse thundered past them, missing her by mere inches. They stood like that for several breathless moments. Eli's hands remained around her, strong and trembling faintly. Her heart pounded against his chest. He pressed his forehead to hers, eyes blazing with fear and something deeper. "Don't ever run toward danger like that," he whispered harshly. "I thought, God, Clara, I thought I'd lose you." She stared up at him. "You won't. Not unless you send me away. I'm never sending you away." And then, finally, the truth broke through. Eli cupped her face gently. "Clara, stay here, not because of a promise my uncle made. Stay because I want you here, because your presence changes this ranch, changes me." Her voice trembled. "Eli, are you sure? I haven't been more sure of anything." A tear slipped down her cheek. He brushed it away with his thumb. "What I did next," he whispered, the corners of his lips lifting, "changed both our lives." He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met, soft and steady, like the beginning of some thing long awaited and deeply earned. The fear, the loneliness, the years of hardship, everything melted in that single moment. When they parted, Clara rested her head on his shoulder, the same shoulder she had once fallen asleep on, and this time, she did it knowingly, willingly. Eli wrapped his arm around her. "Welcome home," he murmured, and for the first time in years, Clara believed she truly was